Now that was a strange race. Kyle Busch winning at Richmond, but it was a long stretch of green and another long stretch of green, another long stretch of green. We expected wild and crazy action like we've seen all year, like we always see when we come to Richmond. Wasn't like that. Some of the longest stretches of green we've seen in several years on the NASCAR Tour. Couldn't quite figure that out. We finally asked Kevin Harvick about that. He had a shot at winning, came in second, and he said the cars were so squirrely, the track was so slick, maybe the hard tires or something like that, maybe the warm weather. Beautiful weather for racing, I tell you. 93,000 people, 78 degrees. You couldn't have asked for a better night of racing. And it was a pretty good crowd, too. The cars were so squirrely that you really had to work to keep a line. So they didn't do a lot of crashing, didn't do a lot of slamming and banging, didn't do a lot of the stuff we normally expect here. There will be, I'm sure, in September when the chase is on the line. He said that's the reason the race was sort of unusual. Tires? Tires played a role. Jeff Gordon was leading down the stretch. Kyle Busch led 221 of the first 225 laps and really had the strongest car in the field. I think Kevin Harvick and Jeff Burton and Jeff Gordon had the next cars, but Kyle Busch was so far ahead of everybody else in terms of just a pure car. Give it credit to Dave Rogers, his crew chief, his new crew chief, who just got his first Cup Tour win. Good job, Dave. Credit for having the car under control the first half of the race, but the second half of the race, Jeff Gordon. We talked to Dave after the race. He said he got a little complacent. When you got an 8-second lead on everybody, you sort of lose track of how to chase the track. He said when they finally got it back, late in the race, he had a game plan, worked out fine. He stopped for tires with 25 laps to go. Jeff Gordon, some of the other leaders, Kevin Harvick and Jeff Burton, didn't stop for tires. Kyle Busch on the charge, great restarts. The guy's got really good restarts, and Jeff Gordon was the one that was complaining about restarts. I can't believe that. This is the guy that lays back on restarts all the time, and he was complaining about other guys laying back on restarts. He didn't really get stuck on the restart, but Kyle Busch had a great restart, took off, came off 3, came off 4, blew him away. Winning, going away. Kyle Busch. And Jeff Gordon losing again. Is that 8 times or 9 times in the last year or so that Jeff Gordon's come up second? The guy's driving his heart out. He's got a great car. Jimmy Johnson wasn't even in the game. In fact, at one point, there were only 8 guys on the lead lap. And that shows you how dominant Kyle Busch was. Kyle Busch and new crew chief Dave Rogers look strong. They probably should have won Phoenix. They had a couple of issues. They won this one. Looked really strong. Good stretch run. Strange race. Good finish. And then coming off 4 the last turn as Kyle was taking the checkered flag, Jimmy Johnson and Clint Boyer crash. I don't know. I think people are starting to take a page from Jeff Gordon's playbook. Rattle Jimmy's cage. He's won 4 championships in all these races. Let's see what we can do to beat him. And Childress, the Richard Childress guys, Clint Boyer, Kevin Harvick, and Jeff Burton, solid cars all night. Any one of the 3 could have won. They look good, and I think that Childress is starting to rattle the Rick Hendrick bunch. And Dale Earnhardt, the other guy in the Rick Hendrick camp. Another story in the National Enquirer. This guy's got his own section, I think, in the National Enquirer, and I don't think that's quite the way that Rick Hendrick likes his drivers to be. He likes nice, clean-cut, plain vanilla guys that do a good job of presenting their sponsors, and the National Enquirer is not what you call the best way to get publicity. I don't know about the stories. I have no idea about the stories. All I know is that when the National Enquirer is featuring you twice already in the season, and it's only May, if you're Rick Hendrick, you're probably saying, need to do something here. Not quite sure what to do. Plus, he didn't run very well. In fact, he ran bad. He was laps down. Kyle Busch beating Jeff Gordon, Kevin Harvick, and Jeff Burton. And Juan Pablo Montoya was in there too. Kevin Harvick comes out of here with the Sprint Cup points lead because Jimmy had a pretty fair to middling night. Going to Darlington, too fast at Darlington, I think, with the speeds they've got down there for that tight of track. But what we had at Richmond tonight was a strange race, a slow-paced race. I don't know why. We need to talk to Stu Grant about that and see if it was tires, Do they need softer tires? Was it just an off night? These guys have been doing a lot of racing lately, hard racing, and they know they've got Darlington coming up, where the speeds are just way too fast for that type of track, and they might be looking ahead. It wasn't the normal Richmond race, but Kyle Busch finally breaks a long losing streak. Hasn't won since August at Bristol. Finally winning. First win with new crew chief Dave Rogers, and he was all pleased about that. That was good for Dave, good for Kyle. Kyle says he's patient. Joe Gibbs, the team owner, says he's seen a new Kyle Busch. I know you've heard new Kyle Busch, new Kyle Busch. We've heard that about twice a year for the last 3 years. Joe Gibbs says Kyle winning the nationwide championship last year made him a changed man. We'll see how long that lasts. But right now he's on a hot streak. He's got momentum, and so do the Childress guys. And so do the Childress guys. Me, I'm thinking Jeff Burton, Darlington, Clint Boyer, maybe Kevin Harvick again. Kevin came close. Hey, you got to put some money on RC's bunch, and you got to put some money on the Joe Gibbs bunch. Those guys, I think, have Rick Hendrick's number right now. And Rick, with all those peace meetings between Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, I don't know. I think Jimmy's a little rattled right now. I think he's a little rattled. I think other guys have seen that what Jeff Gordon's doing, rattling Jimmy's cage, might work. Clint Boyer seemed to think so. We'll see what happens at Darlington. Mike Mulhern. Saturday night, Richmond International Raceway, Kyle Busch winning, beating Kevin Harvick, Jeff Gordon, and Jeff Burton.